Amanda Peterson never imagined her life would unravel in a single moment. One crisp autumn morning, she discovered her husband, Richard Covington, had betrayed her in the worst way possible: heart, mind, and finances. The once charming man who vowed to stand beside her had siphoned her savings, taken the house, and shattered her trust. Yet, Amanda refused to sink into despair. With steely determination, she pieced her life back together from nothing. Years passed, fortunes shifted, and now Amanda stands at the top, a self-made millionaire hungry for justice. This is the story of how betrayal forged a warrior, and how a woman destroyed the man who tried to ruin her. Amanda Peterson grew up in a modest neighborhood in Glendale, California, the daughter of Lucas and Delilah Peterson. She was an only child, but her parents lavished her with the support and warmth that inspired her to dream big. As a teen, Amanda worked at a local diner, balancing schoolwork and part-time shifts. She carried with her a spark of ambition, never content with simply following life's ordinary path. It was at Glendale Community College that she met Richard Covington. Amanda was 20 years old and brimming with hopes for a bright future. At first glance, Richard seemed to share her desire for success. He was tall, with dark brown hair, and exuded a confident charm that drew her in. He talked about his plans to open a high-end automotive repair shop, one that would elevate him above the average mechanic shop on the corner. Amanda was enthralled by how Richard's ambition mirrored her own. They spent hours dreaming about how they would conquer the world together, pooling their talents and energies into a shared life's journey. Their relationship matured rapidly. Richard often invited Amanda over to his mother's bungalow, nestled in a small suburb not far from Glendale. Nights were spent discussing the future, draped in each other's warmth, and forging a bond that Amanda believed would last a lifetime. She cherished how Richard would look into her eyes and promise to protect her heart. She treasured the feeling that someone else believed in her strengths and convictions just as much as she did. When Amanda graduated with a degree in business administration, her family proudly attended the ceremony. Richard smiled at her from the audience, mouthing the words, "We did it." Amanda felt a deep sense of pride and love. Little did she know, those same eyes that filled her with confidence would soon overflow with secrets and betrayal. By the time Amanda was 22, the pair married in a small ceremony. Amanda's parents offered her the last of their savings as a modest wedding gift. The future seemed bright, if only she had known how quickly that bright horizon would darken. In the early months of their marriage, Amanda was so engulfed in newlywed bliss that she overlooked subtle hints about Richard's true nature. They moved into a cozy apartment in Glendale, not far from her parents' home. Both spouses worked, Amanda in an administrative role for a startup tech firm, and Richard at a local car dealership while he saved for his dream automotive business. The first red flags appeared when Richard began to drop cryptic remarks about wanting more money. He complained about how Amanda's salary lagged behind others in her field. He moaned that, with the right backing, he could open his dream shop sooner rather than later. Amanda brushed it off. Of course, she wanted to support her husband's ambition. She believed in him wholeheartedly, admired his drive, and never suspected manipulation might be slithering through his words. Her college friend, Sophia Ramirez, noticed the changes in Amanda's behavior before Amanda did. At dinner one night, Sophia asked Amanda how she really felt about Richard's demands. Was he pushing too hard? Was she comfortable? Amanda shrugged it off and defended him, saying they were partners who had a shared vision. Sophia hesitated, but decided not to press the issue. She thought it best to remain supportive but watchful. Some tension arose one day when Amanda discovered that Richard had taken out a credit card in both of their names without telling her. He insisted it was to build their joint credit score so they could qualify for small business loans in the future. That explanation soothed Amanda's concerns, but the gnawing feeling that something was off lingered. She never felt entirely comfortable with such decisions being made without her knowledge. Money squabbles soon became routine. One weekend, Amanda wanted to set aside a small portion of their paychecks for an emergency fund. Richard balked at the notion, insisting that every extra dollar should go toward his upcoming automotive venture. He found ways to trivialize her concerns, calling her too cautious, even small-minded. Eager to maintain harmony, Amanda backed down each time. Her gentle spirit was no match for Richard's dismissive impatience. When Amanda's father, Lucas, quietly expressed concern, she insisted everything was fine. She was still in love after all. To her, these were simply growing pains of marriage. They were forging a shared path, and challenges would inevitably arise. She never wanted to consider that her husband might not value her best interests at all. A year into their marriage, Richard had a big opportunity fall into his lap at least. That's how he described it. He revealed that a mechanic shop, owned by an older man named Doug Fisher, was up for sale. Richard claimed it was undervalued, and that if he snagged it now, they could transform it into a high-end auto service center. The location was ideal, near a busy stretch of highway in Los Angeles, ensuring steady customer flow. Richard's eyes danced with excitement, conjuring up images of a brand that would rival even dealership service centers. Amanda hesitated at first. Their combined income wasn't enough to finance the purchase. Richard pressed her, insisting they tap into her savings and take out a business loan. He had done extensive research. It was foolproof, he insisted. Amanda was torn between her rising sense of caution and the desire to support her husband's dreams. When she expressed her concern that putting all their eggs in one basket was risky, Richard spun a persuasive story of soon-to-come prosperity, explaining that this was their chance to break free of ordinary living. Amanda's father, Lucas, was more direct in his skepticism. He met with Richard over coffee, politely but firmly questioning the feasibility of the plan. Lucas asked for a business proposal, a realistic timeline, a cost analysis of overhead. Richard bristled, dismissing the questions as signs of archaic thinking. He assured Lucas that he had everything under control, and eventually, feeling pressured by her father's doubts, Amanda defended her husband's position. She apologized to Richard for her father's tough stance, though she also gently suggested more research. Richard brushed it off, calling it time wasted when the golden opportunity was staring them in the face. Eventually, Amanda yielded. With her strong credit history and a chunk of her personal savings, built painstakingly since her teenage diner job, she co-signed for the business loan. Richard flashed her a triumphant grin, promising that they would be unstoppable. Amanda felt a flutter of excitement too, imagining the day she and Richard would proudly cut a ribbon outside their own successful enterprise. She tried to ignore the small tremor of dread nagging at the back of her mind. She told herself she was simply nervous about such a large investment. After all, she had faith in Richard. They were building a life together, bound by the vow that they would stand side by side through every triumph and tribulation. Once the mechanic shop, now rebranded as Covington Elite Autos, opened under Richard's leadership, life for Amanda took a dramatic shift. She found herself juggling her full-time corporate job with the new responsibilities of co-owning a business. Whenever she tried to ask Richard about the daily operations or finances, he brushed her off, claiming she had no need to worry about the details. Though the shop showed signs of life early on, it didn't take long for problems to surface. The overhead was higher than Richard had initially projected. Specialized equipment had to be purchased to cater to high-end vehicles, which meant monthly payments ballooned. Employees needed specialized training, which wasn't cheap. Richard, however, seemed unwilling to tighten the budget anywhere, convinced that an image of luxury required spending big. Amanda tried to help by creating spreadsheets of their monthly income, expenditures, and potential cost-cutting measures. But every time she approached Richard with her thorough analyses, he would dismiss her as being too fretful, calling her mind stuck in petty accounting. The hurt in Amanda's eyes would flicker, but she always tried to maintain her supportive stance. She comforted herself with the thought that early struggles were normal for new businesses. Meanwhile, the time Richard spent at the shop ballooned. He would come home late at night, reeking of engine oil mixed with some cologne Amanda didn't recognize. When she asked him about it, he claimed customers from high society demanded a certain polish and presence, so he'd sometimes freshen up after dealing with greasy cars all day. Amanda forced a laugh, wanting to believe him. Yet the distance between them grew. Intimate dinners turned into leftover takeout meals, shared in silence while Richard thumbed through his phone. He was always texting, though Amanda never dared to look. She didn't want to be that person who snoops through a spouse's phone, so she opted for trust. At times, Amanda would recall those passionate nights they once shared, where they stayed up late dreaming of the future. Now, it felt like she was living with a stranger. The tension was thick, yet she kept telling herself it was just the cost of building something big. Eventually, Richard would settle into a routine, and they'd find their way back to each other. At least, that's what she kept whispering to herself in the early hours of morning, when sleep eluded her as she worried about mounting debts and a husband who seemed more distant each day. The unraveling began one Friday evening. Amanda's close friend, Sophia Ramirez, invited her to a charity gala hosted by the tech startup where Amanda worked. Amanda extended an invitation to Richard, thinking a formal event might ease some strain between them. He declined, claiming urgent deadlines at the shop. Although disappointed, Amanda decided to enjoy the evening with Sophia. At the gala, Amanda was introduced to prospective investors, philanthropic CEOs, and even some local celebrities who funded the event. Between polite handshakes and conversations about exciting new tech solutions, she caught a glimpse of a woman standing at the far side of the ballroom, a blonde in a sleek, crimson evening gown, laughing with a small circle of people. Amanda's heart nearly stopped. Beside the woman, his hand on her waist, stood Richard Covington. He was dressed in an expensive suit, grinning as though he were exactly where he wanted to be. Amanda's blood ran cold. This was the exact event he had claimed he could not attend, and yet, here he was. Questions banged inside her head. Who was the woman? Why did Richard lie? She stood there, motionless, as her world started to spin. Sophia caught Amanda's arm, alarmed by the blanch that overcame her friend's face. Trembling, Amanda excused herself from the group of tech investors she had been talking to, weaving her way across the ballroom. Her footfalls felt heavy, as if she were trudging through wet concrete. Anxiety pounded in her chest. She made it just close enough to hear Richard's laughter carry over the din of chatter. The blonde woman was giggling, leaning into him intimately. Amanda's stomach churned. Before Richard noticed her, Amanda pivoted and rushed out of the ballroom. She felt tears burning at the corners of her eyes. She didn't want to make a scene, not at a charity event. Sophia, fiercely protective, hurried after her. Amanda managed to hold it together until they were in the parking lot, illuminated by the harsh fluorescent lights. It was there she allowed the tears to flow. They talked in hushed tones, leaning against Sophia's car. Sophia wanted to march right back inside and confront Richard, but Amanda begged her not to. She needed a moment to think. He lied to me, and he's here with another woman, Amanda said, voice trembling. Sophia rubbed her back in circles, urging her to confront him eventually, but to do so in a safe, private environment. Amanda recognized that perhaps there had been other signs. The unexplained cologne, the suspicious late nights, the dismissals and abrupt changes of plan. The heartbreak felt like 1,000 shards cutting through her, but she also felt a surprising surge of anger rising in her veins. How dare he humiliate her like this? In that moment, as tears stained her cheeks, Amanda resolved that if Richard was betraying her trust, she would find out the truth, even if it meant unraveling her life to do so. That night, Amanda didn't return to their apartment. Instead, she stayed with Sophia, pacing the guest room, rehashing every clue she might have missed. By the time dawn broke, her mind was a swirl of possibilities. She refused to jump to a final conclusion based on a single sighting. However, the gnawing sense of betrayal demanded resolution. The next day, Amanda returned home. Richard was in the living room, sipping coffee and wearing the same shirt she'd seen him in at the gala. He acted casual, greeting her with a half smile and a dismissive hey. Amanda fought to keep her voice steady. She walked over, coffee mug in hand, and placed it on the table. "How was the urgent deadline at the shop last night?" she asked. The tension in the room was palpable. Richard didn't seem to sense it fully at first, or at least, he pretended not to. "It was good," he said, not looking up from his phone. Amanda took a deep breath. "You weren't at the shop," she stated flatly. "I saw you at the charity gala with a blonde woman. Why did you lie to me?" Richard's entire demeanor changed in an instant. His face froze, and he set down his phone. "You must be mistaken," he replied, though the flicker of panic in his eyes betrayed him. Amanda crossed her arms, unimpressed with his feeble protest. She stood her ground, recounting his suit, the blonde's crimson dress, how they laughed together. There was no denying it. Bristling, Richard fired back. "You were spying on me." He attempted to twist the narrative, accusing Amanda of not trusting him enough. His voice rose, defiant. "That was a business contact, all right. A potential investor. I needed to make a good impression. If you'd confronted us, you would have ruined everything." Amanda felt her blood boil. "If it was purely professional, why did you lie about it? Why not invite me, or at least tell me you'd be there?" She refused to be cowed by his defensive posturing. Richard tried to deflect, insisting that he didn't want to upset her because he knew she was sensitive about money matters. He rattled off that the woman, Clarissa Knight, was from a wealthy family known to invest in businesses like his. Amanda recognized the name Clarissa was indeed from a prominent family, but the closeness Amanda witnessed was not strictly professional. They argued for hours. At the end of it, Amanda's eyes were rimmed red, and Richard stormed out, slamming the door behind him. He left Amanda trembling in the wake of his anger. She sank onto the couch, the weight of disillusionment pressing down. For the first time, she truly saw the cracks in the picture, perfect marriage she had believed in, and she began to question everything she and Richard had built, or failed to build together. With the confrontation fueling her suspicions, Amanda dug deeper. She went through their shared financial statements for Covington Elite Autos. What she found made her feel nauseous. Loans had been taken out in her name that she never signed or authorized. Expenses were recorded for lavish dinners and hotel stays under the category business entertainment, far more extravagant than any prospective client meetings she knew about. Bills were piling up, many going unpaid. It appeared that Richard had funneled money into personal luxuries. Terrified and furious, Amanda reached out to her old neighbor, Wade Johnson, who worked as an attorney in Glendale. Wade was the quiet kid on her block, growing up, but he'd found his calling in law. She shared the documents with him and explained her situation. Wade's expression grew grim as he noticed glaring irregularities and possible fraud, especially where Richard had forged Amanda's signature on loan papers. The legal complexities were daunting. If the shop went under, Amanda could be left with massive debts for which she was personally responsible. And if Richard's actions were proven to be fraudulent, it could ruin him, but it would also drag Amanda into a protracted legal battle. Even more frightening was the possibility that Clarissa Knight's involvement signaled a deeper scheme. Was she simply a fling, or was something more sinister going on? Amanda decided to confront Richard about the forged documents. She went to the shop during peak hours, stomping past stunned mechanics as she marched into Richard's office. He was leaning over a desk covered in invoices when she barged in, brandishing a stack of papers. "What is this?" she demanded, slamming the papers onto his desk. The employees in the adjacent office peered nervously through the glass window. Richard shot her a warning look, as though her appearance at the shop was an act of betrayal. "This isn't the place, Amanda," he snapped, flicking a glance at the onlookers. He tried to move the conversation outside, but Amanda refused to budge. "You forged my signature," she accused, her voice shaking with rage and heartbreak. "You took out loans in my name. You used our joint credit card for personal fun, and you lied about it." The word liar pierced the tension, echoing through the office. Richard's composure wavered. He tried to spin it, claiming he did what was necessary to keep the business afloat. He even had the gall to suggest Amanda was partially responsible, since she insisted on controlling finances like some worried old woman. Amanda scoffed. "I was never controlling. I was trying to protect us." She wanted to scream, but her throat was too tight. Seething with anger, Richard told her to leave his office. "If you don't trust me enough to let me do what I have to, then just go," he hissed. Shaken to her core, Amanda retreated. Her illusions were now thoroughly shattered. The man she loved had not only betrayed her heart, he had compromised her entire financial future. She knew she had to get out before it destroyed her completely. It didn't take long for Covington Elite Autos to spiral toward failure. Richard's lavish spending and questionable bookkeeping caught up to him. Late payments and unpaid invoices crushed the business, leading to a steady drop in the quality of services. Word spread that the high-end service center was disorganized and overpriced. Loyal customers fled to more reliable alternatives. Amid this chaos, Amanda served Richard with divorce papers. She agonized over the decision, but her trust was irreparably broken. She found it impossible to stay married to a man who had hurt her so profoundly. Though her heart ached, she clung to a faint hope of salvaging some of her finances. Richard refused to go down quietly. He turned venomous, threatening to drag Amanda through court if she didn't keep quiet about his misdeeds. He tried to intimidate her by saying he would blame everything on her, forging a narrative that she had masterminded the financial fiasco. For the first time, Amanda realized that Richard's ambition was rooted in selfish greed rather than genuine partnership. Any love he had once claimed to have for her was overshadowed by his determination to avoid consequences. To make matters worse, Clarissa Knight took an active role in supporting Richard. She introduced him to her family's attorney, who helped him concoct a story that pinned responsibility for the failing business on Amanda. He claimed she was incompetent at handling finances, and that he had simply trusted his wife's misguided strategies. Feeling cornered, Amanda relied on Wade Johnson's legal acumen. He prepared strong counterarguments and gathered evidence that Richard had forged Amanda's signatures. Friends and colleagues submitted statements attesting to how Richard had lied and manipulated. As the legal battle intensified, Amanda feared she would be left with nothing. She was consumed by stress, losing weight, and struggling to sleep. During a preliminary hearing, Richard arrived with Clarissa on his arm, both dressed in designer clothes. The sight was like a physical blow to Amanda, who recognized that Richard had replaced her completely romantically and financially. When the hearing ended for the day, Richard wore a smug grin, as though he had already won. 1 week later, Covington Elite Autos shut its doors due to insurmountable debt. While the business collapsed, Richard cunningly maneuvered so that the loan obligations fell heavily on Amanda. Soon after, in a move that stunned her, the court awarded Richard possession of most of their remaining shared assets, thanks to Clarissa's expensive legal team and cunning strategies. Amanda's world came crashing down. Penniless, humiliated, and emotionally drained, she left the courthouse feeling as though life had ended. She had no idea this was just the beginning of her story. In the aftermath of the devastating divorce proceedings, Amanda found herself in a cramped guest room at her parents' house. She carried only a suitcase of clothes and a heart full of grief. The betrayal she endured left her feeling hollow, and the crushing debt pinned to her name threatened her every move. Bills piled up for loans she never truly consented to, forcing her to take a second job just to chip away at the mountain of interest. Yet beneath the despair flickered a raw determination. Amanda reminded herself that she was well educated. She had a strong work ethic. She possessed a business mind. If there was any silver lining, it was that she had learned valuable lessons from the fiasco with Richard. She now understood the importance of scrutinizing every financial document, trusting but verifying, and never allowing another individual to have unchecked control over her life. One fateful afternoon, she stumbled across a small advertisement in a local paper. Freelance consultant needed for small businesses. The position promised flexible hours and decent pay for someone skilled in business administration. Instinct told her to apply. Within a week, Amanda was hired to consult for a local bakery struggling with its finances. She worked tirelessly, reorganizing the bakery's budget, advising them on marketing tactics, and optimizing their supply chain. In less than 3 months, the bakery's monthly profits stabilized, and new customers poured in. Impressed by her ability to turn things around, they recommended her to other local businesses. Word spread of Amanda's consulting prowess. Soon, she was approached by a neighborhood salon, a boutique clothing store, and even a small accounting firm that needed help streamlining their processes. She juggled these consulting gigs with her part-time job, funneling every extra dollar she earned toward the crippling debts Richard had left her with. Though the slog was exhausting, Amanda felt a renewed sense of purpose with each success story. During this period, her father, Lucas, stood by her side, offering quiet emotional support and encouragement. Her mother, Delilah, helped by cooking hot meals when Amanda came home late from her client visits. Sophia Ramirez remained her staunch ally, assisting with local networking. Little by little, Amanda's name in Glendale became synonymous with competence and resilience. Every so often, she would catch snippets about Richard. She learned he still lived the high life, with Clarissa Knight in Los Angeles. Rumors whispered that they hosted fancy parties, courting new investors, as if Richard's previous downfall had never happened. Amanda forced herself not to dwell on it. She had her own future to build, and the bitterness she felt would only weigh her down if she let it. Still, a part of her smoldered with anger that could either consume her or fuel her next steps. Amanda chose to let it fuel her. Nearly 2 years passed. Amanda's consulting business blossomed faster than she could have imagined. She transitioned from juggling scattered freelance gigs to running a legitimate small consultancy firm with 3 junior consultants and an accountant on contract. Though she still lived frugally to pay off her debts, she found satisfaction in watching her client list expand. Her big break arrived when a tech startup, Bright Vision Innovations, took notice of her success in salvaging small businesses in Glendale. They approached Amanda with a pivotal proposal: help them prepare for a major funding round and subsequent market launch. The compensation was enormous, enough to wipe out the remainder of her debts and leave her with substantial savings. At first, Amanda hesitated, partly from lingering fears. She remembered how Richard had once dazzled her with big promises. But Bright Vision Innovations was legitimate. Their founder, Martin Chu, had a stellar reputation and had never been involved in financial scandal. When Amanda did her due diligence, all signs pointed to a promising partnership. She accepted the contract, though a voice in the back of her mind warned her to stay vigilant. Over the next 6 months, Amanda immersed herself in Bright Vision's inner workings. She revamped their budgeting processes, prepared them for due diligence by potential investors, and set a concrete business roadmap. To her delight, every piece fell into place. Their final presentation to venture capitalists was a resounding success, landing them a multi-million-dollar investment. After the deal closed, Martin Chu insisted that Amanda join as a permanent consultant, offering her stock options as part of her compensation. Unsure at first, Amanda realized how profitable those stock options could be if Bright Vision soared. That same spark of ambition from her college days, the one she once shared with Richard, flickered back to life. She accepted, carefully negotiating a contract that gave her a share of the company's future earnings. In the following months, Bright Vision launched a breakthrough software product, and the market responded with enthusiasm. The startup's valuation shot through the roof. Amanda's stock options multiplied in worth. Suddenly, she found herself with an unprecedented amount of wealth at her fingertips. The day she checked her brokerage account and saw the final figure, her hands trembled with disbelief. She had become a millionaire in her own right. Gone was the timid, heartbroken woman living in her parents' guest room. In her place stood a confident entrepreneur, shaped by adversity, focused on growth, and unafraid of risk. She no longer saw herself through Richard's dismissive lens. She was free financially, emotionally, and psychologically. Yet, even as she tried to move forward, a persistent thought tugged at her. Richard, the man who had robbed her of so much, a man now living in comfortable luxury thanks to Clarissa Knight's money. She had neither forgiven nor forgotten, and now she had the means and the will to settle the score. A year after becoming a millionaire, Amanda hadn't lost her sense of gratitude for all she had achieved. She lived in a tastefully modest condo, drove a practical sedan, and continued to nurture her consultancy firm. She also devoted time to philanthropic causes in Glendale, donating to local shelters, offering free seminars to small business owners, and quietly paying off her parents' mortgage. Yet, in the back of her mind, she orchestrated the first steps of a plan she had been mulling over for months, ensuring Richard faced accountability. Ever since the bitter divorce, Amanda had followed the swirl of rumors surrounding Richard's life with Clarissa. They were said to be expanding into real estate developments, presumably riding on Clarissa's family wealth. On a whim, Amanda decided to attend a high-profile business conference in Los Angeles, one rumored to be hosting up and coming entrepreneurs and established investors. In typical fashion, Richard and Clarissa were rumored to be guests. Amanda arrived at the conference wearing a sleek black pantsuit. She was no longer the meek woman, overshadowed by Richard's presence. Her confident stride and the calm set of her shoulders announced her success even before she spoke. Sure enough, within an hour, she spotted Richard leaning against a marble pillar in the luxurious hotel lobby. He was shaking hands with an older man in a tailored suit. Clarissa hovered close by, draped in diamonds, scanning the crowd. Amanda felt a surge of conflicting emotions, the pain of betrayal mixed with a potent satisfaction. She approached them, her head held high. The second Richard's eyes landed on her, his confident facade wavered, betraying a moment of shock. Clarissa eyed Amanda with thinly veiled disdain. "Long time no see," Amanda said politely with an understated smile. She extended a hand to Clarissa, who returned a flimsy handshake, eyes flicking over Amanda's outfit and name badge. Perhaps Clarissa recognized the name from the divorce fiasco. Perhaps she was just jealous to see Amanda so composed. Richard tried to regain his composure, greeting her casually with false warmth. "Amanda, good to see you. How have you been?" he asked, as though they were old friends meeting for brunch. Amanda almost laughed at his audacity. "I've been productive," she replied. "And you?" Richard recounted a grandiose story about real estate ventures and upcoming business deals, peppering in how Clarissa was a major asset in his pursuits. Amanda listened quietly, feigning interest. When he finished, she dropped the pretense. "I'd love to hear more, Richard. The first might have resources to offer as well." A glimmer sparked in Richard's eyes, the greed she recognized all too well. He didn't realize that by inviting her into his circle, he'd be opening the door for his own downfall. Clarissa's carefully painted smile twitched, an unease creeping into her demeanor. Amanda excused herself gracefully, leaving them to wonder about her newfound confidence and wealth. She had made her re-entry into Richard's orbit. Now it was only a matter of time before she struck back. Over the next several weeks, Amanda cultivated her presence in the same circles as Richard. She attended high society fundraisers, networking events, and real estate open houses. Her name began to surface in conversations as a savvy investor and consultant. Richard, ever the opportunist, saw an opening. He believed Amanda's money, of which he now had some inkling, could benefit his new ventures. Eventually, he invited Amanda to a dinner meeting at a chic rooftop restaurant in downtown Los Angeles. Clarissa was conspicuously absent, which suited Amanda's plan. Arriving with her longtime friend, Sofia Ramirez acting as both moral support and business partner, Amanda greeted Richard with a cold poise. Over cocktails, he tried to charm her with visions of high returns in property developments, using phrases like "this is your second chance to get in on something big." The irony wasn't lost on her. She played her part perfectly, feigning polite intrigue. She asked about the projected revenues, how he intended to finance developments, and whether Clarissa Knight's family had put any resources into it. Richard boasted about the connections he'd made, name-dropping wealthy families, bragging about potential bank loans, painting a rosy future. If Amanda had been the naive woman from years ago, she might have been dazzled. But now she saw the holes, recognized the flimsy guesses, spotted the same brand of empty promises Richard had once fed her. Sophia pitched in by casually mentioning that Amanda had recently completed an extremely lucrative partnership with Bright Vision Innovations, hinting that Amanda's resources were significant. Richard's eyes gleamed. "That's exactly what we need," he said, leaning forward. "If you invest, we can finalize the land purchases immediately. You and I both know how valuable property can be in this area. It's a win-win." Amanda nodded with measured interest. "Send me the details," she responded. She sipped her drink, letting him believe she was tempted. Inside, she felt a swirl of disgust and thrill at how easily Richard was lured. The trap was taking shape. In reality, Amanda had no intention of pouring her money into his project. She wanted only to get close enough to observe every aspect of his dealings. Perhaps, she reasoned, she could expose him for the fraudulent manipulator he was. Before the evening ended, Amanda's phone vibrated with an incoming message. She glanced down to see a text from an unknown number. "Watch yourself. He hasn't changed." Amanda's heart twinged. She suspected it was from someone who knew Richard well, maybe an ex-employee from Covington Elite Autos, or even a rumored mistress. Either way, she was well aware of who Richard was. She had no illusions. Leaving the restaurant, Amanda whispered to Sophia, "Let's get every detail of this project from him, and if we find anything illicit, we'll make sure the world knows." With a resolute nod, Sophia agreed. The wheels were already in motion. Amanda, once a victim, was about to rewrite her fate and ensure Richard finally faced his reckoning. As Amanda inched closer to Richard's new projects, she uncovered a tangled web of dubious deals. She discovered that Richard was courting multiple investors, using the same plot of land as collateral, effectively double and triple pledging the same property. If those investors ever came together to compare notes, his entire scheme would crumble. It was the same old Richard, painting illusions of grandeur for personal gain, unconcerned with the fallout. Working behind the scenes, Amanda formed alliances with two disillusioned minor investors, George Milburn and Sandra Lee. They had each contributed modest amounts to Richard's venture, but received limited information in return. They were growing nervous about the contradictory updates Richard provided. Amanda, empathizing with their position, provided reassurance and a promise, "Stick with me, and we'll get to the truth." Both George and Sandra agreed, forging a quiet alliance that allowed Amanda to collect more evidence. Sophia tapped into her network, gathering data on the property's title and any mortgages attached to it. What they found was damning. Multiple deeds and loan applications, each listing a different investor group as the primary financier. It was a house of cards waiting to collapse. Amanda then reached out to Wade Johnson, her loyal attorney friend. Over a series of late-night coffee meetings, they assembled a comprehensive dossier, complete with scanned documents, written testimonies, and an analysis of Richard's contradictory claims. They planned carefully, wanting to ensure that if they exposed him, it would be irrevocable. No more legal loopholes for Richard to slip through. Yet, a part of Amanda was torn. She recalled the wide-eyed man she first fell for, the one who spoke passionately about building a better life. The memory stung, but she recognized that man was either an illusion or buried so deep that he no longer existed. Richard had chosen his path, forging signatures, siphoning funds, lying to investors. Now he was pulling the same con on new victims. In the midst of her investigation, Clarissa Knight made a surprise appearance at Amanda's condo building one evening. Security phoned to say a miss. Knight was in the lobby. Curious, Amanda agreed to see her, bringing Sophia along just in case. Clarissa looked every bit the socialite, wearing a designer coat and an agitated expression. "I don't know what you're up to, Amanda," Clarissa began coolly, "but stay away from Richard and our business. We have powerful friends. Don't make yourself an enemy." Her threat was thinly veiled. Amanda studied her face, noticing underlying anxiety. Perhaps Clarissa sensed that the bedrock of their empire was unstable. Amanda remained calm. "If your business is legitimate, you have nothing to worry about," she replied. "But if there's something to hide, don't blame me for consequences that arise." Clarissa's cheeks flushed. She turned on her heel and stalked out of the lobby. As the door slid shut behind Clarissa, Amanda exchanged a glance with Sophia. Clarissa's confrontation only confirmed they were close to unmasking Richard's scheme. And this time, no intimidation or fancy legal maneuvering would deter Amanda from exposing the truth. With all pieces in place, Amanda coordinated a decisive move. She persuaded the smaller investors George Milburn and Sandra Lee to schedule a joint meeting with Richard, supposedly to discuss finalizing further investments. At Amanda's suggestion, they invited a prominent journalist, Carmela Harris, who specialized in uncovering white-collar fraud. The cover story was that Carmela was a potential investor's representative, wanting to evaluate the business before committing large sums of capital. The group convened in a sleek conference room at a high-rise building. In downtown LA, Richard strutted in with Clarissa at his side, greeting everyone with exaggerated pleasantries. Amanda arrived last, armed with her dossier and accompanied by Wade Johnson. Richard's confidence flickered the moment Amanda stepped into the room. He shot her a questioning look, but she merely returned a cool, professional smile. "Ready to talk business?" she asked, taking her seat at the conference table. Richard cleared his throat, forced a grin, and began his usual spiel about guaranteed returns, prime real estate, and unstoppable growth. Amanda let him speak uninterrupted for a solid 10 minutes. He flashed glossy photos of architectural plans, projected profit charts, and even boasted about securing personal loans from well-connected financiers. Then, he invited questions. Sandra Lee, voice steady, asked how multiple investors could claim rights to the same property. Richard's eyes flickered. He looked to Clarissa, who maintained a stiff posture. He stammered something about joint ownership deals, but provided no specifics. George Milburn followed up with concerns about conflicting legal documents. Richard tried to deflect, claiming he'd handle the legalities personally. Carmela Harris, still masquerading as an investor's rep, spoke next, zeroing in on the legitimacy of the mortgages. Richard squirmed. The tension in the room rose. Sensing the pressure, Clarissa attempted to steer the conversation, urging everyone not to get caught up in technicalities. She flaunted her family's wealth, implying that if any shortfall occurred, her father's empire would cover it. The mention of her family name didn't impress Amanda, who saw it as the same old intimidation tactic. Amanda glanced at Wade, who nodded subtly. She placed a folder on the table, opening it to reveal copies of the contradictory property deeds. The atmosphere chilled. "Could you clarify why these documents list separate investors as the primary owners for the same parcel of land?" she asked, her voice calm yet cutting. Richard's mouth fell open. He turned shades paler as Amanda produced more evidence. Forged signatures, contradictory loan applications, inflated valuations. Sandra Lee and George Milburn exchanged glances that showed equal parts relief and rage. It was undeniable. Richard was using the same collateral to lure multiple investors, essentially building a Ponzi-like scheme around real estate. Carmela, who had quietly recorded much of the meeting, removed her journalist's credential from her pocket. She announced who she was and stated that she had all the evidence she needed to break a major story on real estate fraud. Clarissa shot to her feet, sputtering protests about confidentiality. But Carmilla countered that no such agreement was in place. Panic streaked across Clarissa's face. Richard glared at Amanda, fury and fear swirling in his eyes. "You set this up," he hissed. "You never intended to invest." Amanda rose from her chair, eyes leveled at him. "You stole from me, ruined my finances, and left me with nothing. You lied to countless people, forging signatures, pocketing money. This time, you won't walk away unscathed." For the first time in memory, Richard Covington was rendered speechless. The fallout was swift and spectacular. Carmilla Harris wasted no time publishing her expose, backed by undeniable proof of fraud. The article ignited public outrage. Investors, both large and small, banded together in a class action lawsuit against Richard Covington and, by association, Clarissa Knight. Even Clarissa's powerful family hesitated to shield them entirely from the legal storm, especially given how damning the evidence was. They distanced themselves, leaving Clarissa to face the consequences of her decisions. Within days, regulatory agencies launched formal investigations into Richard's business dealings. Property deals were halted, bank accounts frozen, and subpoenas issued. George Milburn and Sandra Lee spearheaded the investor side of the lawsuit, with Wade Johnson providing legal counsel based on the wealth of evidence he and Amanda had compiled. Richard was cornered from every angle. As the scandal snowballed, Richard's life of luxury evaporated. He found no sympathetic audience among former associates, who now saw him as toxic. Clarissa Knight, desperate to salvage her own reputation, cut ties with him and disappeared from the public eye. Richard, once smug and seemingly untouchable, was left scrambling for any semblance of a defense. When the trial commenced, Amanda testified about her experiences, how Richard had forged documents during their marriage, saddling her with debts and financial ruin. Her testimony painted a vivid picture of a man driven by greed at any cost. Other victims also took the stand, recounting similar stories of deception and loss. Richard's attorney tried to dismiss some evidence as unsubstantiated, but Wade Johnson systematically refuted every argument, citing meticulously documented records. In the end, the verdict was damning. The court found Richard Covington guilty of multiple counts of fraud, ordering him to pay substantial restitution to the defrauded investors, though he lacked the finances to reimburse them fully. The ruling destroyed what little remained of his reputation, effectively blacklisting him from legitimate business circles. Clarissa Knight settled out of court, paying a hefty sum to avoid a lengthy legal process. Through it all, Amanda remained composed. She watched as the man who once stole everything from her faced a public reckoning. She didn't rejoice in his downfall, but she felt a profound sense of closure. For years, the anger and hurt festered inside her. Now, with justice served, she could finally let go of the emotional weight. Richard's betrayal had cast upon her life, but Amanda's story wasn't done. She'd reclaimed her agency and her future, and it was time to wield her success for something far greater than vengeance. With Richard's fate sealed, Amanda felt an unexpected calm. No longer haunted by what he had done or how he had wronged her, she realized she had room in her life for something new, something transformative. She continued running her thriving consulting firm, but she wanted to channel her resources and experiences into a project that would benefit others who had faced similar hardships. Amanda decided to create a foundation, the Phoenix Rise Foundation, designed to support individuals, particularly women, who had suffered financial harm at the hands of unscrupulous partners. The foundation provided free legal advice, financial counseling, and small grants to help people rebuild their lives. She partnered with Wade Johnson for legal guidance and invited her father, Lucas, to serve on the board alongside her friend, Sophia Ramirez. Together, they launched a pilot program in Glendale, then rapidly expanded to other parts of California. Their foundation quickly garnered media attention. Journalists who had covered Richard's scandal became intrigued by Amanda's philanthropic efforts. She was interviewed for local news segments, featured in online publications, and praised for her determination to turn personal tragedy into collective empowerment. Meanwhile, Bright Vision Innovations soared to even greater heights. Their flagship software became a staple in corporate environments, and the company ventured into international markets. As a result, Amanda's stock options grew more valuable. Still, she remained down to earth, investing her wealth not only in her own comfort, but in philanthropic ventures that aligned with her foundation's mission. One day, Martin Chu, founder of Bright Vision, approached Amanda with a new offer. He wanted her to join the board of directors, a prestigious role typically reserved for the most influential stakeholders. Amanda hesitated, worried about spreading herself too thin, but Martin insisted that her insights were invaluable. Reluctantly, she agreed, stepping into a role that once felt unattainable for a young girl who used to balance college classes with diner shifts. Standing in the boardroom, Amanda felt a pang of nostalgia. She was light years away from the insecure woman who begged for Richard's attention and approval. She had grown into her own person, fiercely independent, financially astute, and guided by a moral compass that refused to break, no matter how many storms she faced. By now, Glendale saw Amanda Peterson not just as a rags-to-riches success story, but as a symbol of resilience and justice. Her father beamed with pride. Sophia, forever loyal, called Amanda's transformation the best revenge, living well and helping others. And Amanda herself found a sense of peace, at last, in the knowledge that she was forging a legacy built on integrity, determination, and compassion. Though she had once desired nothing more than to see Richard suffer the consequences of his actions, she ultimately realized that her own growth and positive impact on others were far more meaningful than revenge alone. One afternoon, on the sun-drenched streets of Glendale, Amanda found herself walking into a small artisan coffee shop she frequented with Sophia. She ordered her usual latte and glanced around, taking in the comforting hum of espresso machines and chatting patrons. When she turned to find a seat, she nearly bumped into a familiar figure, Richard Covington. He looked drastically different from the self-assured man she'd last encountered in court. His hair was disheveled, and his once expensive suit had seen better days. He clutched a plain briefcase and wore a defeated expression, as though the weight of the world pressed upon his shoulders. For a moment, they locked eyes. Amanda felt an unexpected surge of sympathy. Despite everything, she couldn't ignore that he was once someone she had loved. She mustered a polite nod. Unsure if she should say anything, Richard broke the silence first. "Amanda," he said, voice wavering. He looked around, as if searching for the right words. I didn't expect to see you here." His eyes drifted to her designer handbag, the crisp blouse, the air of quiet confidence that clung to her. She imagined he could see her success, emanating in ways he once insisted she could never achieve without him. She contemplated walking away. Perhaps the best closure was no closure at all. Yet a voice inside urged her to speak. "How are you, Richard?" she asked softly. Not out of affection, but out of a sense of humanity. He winced at the question, as though it reminded him of what he'd lost. "I'm doing my best," he replied, stammering. "Could we maybe talk sometime?" Amanda studied his worn face. She suspected he wanted her help, or maybe her forgiveness. A pang of old hurt rippled through her. She thought of all the damage he caused, not just to her, but to countless investors. She breathed in, steadying herself, then exhaled. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Richard," she said, leaving the proposition unanswered. Balancing her latte, she stepped around him and found a seat in the corner of the cafe. Richard lingered for a moment, then silently slipped out. Amanda watched his retreating figure, thinking that life had come full circle. She had risen from nothing to build a success story on her own terms. He, once so smug, now had the hollow eyes of a man who'd gambled everything and lost. Perhaps that was vengeance enough. Later that night, Amanda stood on the balcony of her condo, gazing at the sparkling skyline of downtown Los Angeles. She sipped a glass of wine, her thoughts drifting to the unexpected encounter with Richard. Years ago, she would have felt knots in her stomach at the mere thought of him. Now, she felt a gentle wave of empathy, tempered by the knowledge that she owed him nothing. A ping from her phone pulled her attention. It was an email notification about a new donation made to the Phoenix Rise Foundation. She opened it to discover an anonymous contribution large enough to fund a new legal clinic pilot program for 6 months. Moved by the generosity, she wondered who the donor was, whether it was an ally or perhaps someone touched by her mission. It didn't matter. The difference it would make was real. She thought back to the nights she spent crying over Richard's betrayals, the mountain of debt she believed would bury her, the moments of paralyzing fear in the courtroom. She remembered the pit in her stomach when she realized the man she loved had forged her name, the helplessness when the court awarded him more than he deserved, and the numbness as she walked away from the life she had built. But none of that defined her anymore. Instead, her life was shaped by the courage it took to stand up for herself, the resilience she tapped into, and the unwavering support of friends like Sophia Ramirez and Wade Johnson. Her father's quiet strength and her mother's unconditional love had carried her through the storm. In each step, Amanda discovered her own power, realizing that betrayal can either break you or make you unbreakable. She closed her eyes, taking in the cool night air, and whispered a silent prayer of gratitude, not just for her newfound wealth, but for the lessons she'd learned. She thought of the women and men who would pass through the doors of the Phoenix Rise Foundation, battered by life's cruelties, yet filled with hope. That was her real legacy, the promise that one could rebuild from ashes, forging something stronger than before. In the distance, city lights glimmered, a testament to endless possibilities. Amanda took another sip of wine, her heart both light and full. Tomorrow, she would continue to use her success to uplift others. Tonight, she allowed herself a quiet moment of pride. She had won. Thank you for joining Amanda Peterson's gripping journey. From heartbreak and betrayal to self-made success and unstoppable resilience, her story is a powerful reminder that life's most crushing setbacks can become the very fuel that propels us to greatness. We watched Amanda confront deception, rebuild her life from nothing, and ultimately become a beacon of hope for those who, like her, once felt shattered. Each twist and turn taught us about the strength of perseverance and the triumph of justice. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of life's extraordinary possibilities, we invite you to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Let's spread these stories of hope and determination to as many people as possible. Together, we can encourage one another to rise above betrayal, reclaim our power, and illuminate the path to a brighter, more triumphant tomorrow.